Inland Revenue Amendment Bill 2014.
議案
Members' motion to debate on motions with no legislative effect. I have accepted the recommendations of the House Committee that is movers of the motions each may speak, including making a reply, for up to 15 minutes, and other members each may speak for up to 7 minutes. The mover of the second member's motion has another 5 minutes to speak on the amendment, and the mover of the amendment to their motion may speak for up to 10 minutes. I'm obliged to direct any member speaking in excess of the specified time to discontinue. First member's motion, the June 4th incident. Members who wish to speak in the motion debate will please press the Request to Speak button. I now call upon Honorable Lee Cheuk-yan to speak and move the motion. Honorable Lee Cheuk-yan. President, this is the 25th anniversary of June 4th. I solemnly move the motion on June 4th. Now, June 4th has already passed, but at least it is still important for us to put on record, 25 years after June 4th, whether and how we react to June 4th. I claim a division.
回到翻轉。
李卓人議員，你可以先坐地。
Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan, you may now be seated.
何秀蘭議員，我建議你唔好着咗個燈。
Mr. Ho, I suggest that you don't switch on the light. I don't think it has disturbed anybody. It does. It disturbs me. Member, please consider, we still have to draw a line. If we allow members to become very creative and make use of the light, I'm afraid it will be difficult for the Council to keep our bottom line. Mr. Chairman, yes, I can avoid using this, but I can. Ms. Ho, please switch it off. Ms. Ho, please switch off the light. Do you allow me to make use of the installations of the Council? If a member has a lamp reflecting light, I would ask him, and I have asked him to switch it off. Would you give this light an opportunity? Please switch it off. I'm not going to switch it off. Mr. Ho, please don't make me come to the view that you are grossly disorderly. Mr. Ho, I'm afraid you don't have to light up the display you are showing. Mr. President, this light has already been lit by many people in the Victoria Park. If you don't even allow this to be switched on, I find it very regrettable. Mr. Ho, I say this again, please switch it off.
2蚊鐘梗係攞完鐘先喎。 請議員返回座位。
Members, please return to your seats.
李卓人議員，請你繼續發。
Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan, please continue. Mr. President, in this very solemn chamber, we are moving a motion on the June 4th. We want to put on record, after 25 years, we want to know about the position of the pro-establishment camp. In the past, someone put on an advertisement to condemn the massacre. Now today, they are dodging the issue. They don't want to speak. They don't want to tell the people of Hong Kong what they think now. But I think the people of Hong Kong has a very clear position. Today or this year, many people ask me this question. How come that we have been we have persisted for so long, for 25 years. I've told them that it's because of you. When we saw 180,000 candles, so it's very clear that for 25 years, we still have 180,000 people filling the Victoria Park, the Causeway Bay area. It is very clear the people of Hong Kong haven't forgotten, because we know, as Mr. Chi-wai has said, the administration that we have to face is the most tyrannical administration, and we have not been able to make it kneel down. But we believe that at the end of the day, democracy will win. While preparing for the 25th anniversary, I didn't pay too much attention to the fact that it's the 25th anniversary, because I've always been trying to promote the event. We hope that there will be more people joining. There was the opening of the museum. We had to face with the protest, the legal action. And then it suddenly occurred to me that, well, indeed, it's the 25th anniversary. On the 1st of June, I saw all the veteran Democrats. For 25 years, we have been joining our hands to join the protest. I couldn't hold back my tears, because at that moment, I really felt that it's 25 years, and I missed Mr. Chi-wai. He used to be with us, but this year he is no longer with us. But I'm sure he sees it. He will see that he will not be disappointed by us. And we are all proud of the 180,000 people filling the Victoria Park. I have been using many different slogans for the candle vigil. I think the best one is that we dare not remember it, and yet we can't forget it. Whenever we think about it, the memory is indeed too painful for us. This is because we see the nature of this administration. And the administration, in order to maintain its rule, it would go to the extreme of opening fire at the people. We don't want to recall the images. We don't want to recall the bloodshed. We don't want to see the bodies lying around. We don't want to remember. But as the slogan has said, we don't want to recall the memory, but we dare not forget. No one dares to forget. We must remember. We must remember the sacrifice of the democratic martyrs. The students, for the sake of democracy, they have paid with their lives, and we dare not forget. The people don't want to recall the memory, and yet we dare not forget. But then the communist rulers, they don't allow us to remember. They don't allow us to remember. You can see that on the eve of the June 4th, they try to suppress everything. They want to silence everybody who dare to mention June 4th. They have been doing so for 25 years. If you try to key in the words June 4th to search for it, you can't get anything. In order to go around this censorship, we call ourselves 535 in relation to June 4th Museum. And then for Tiananmen mothers, even as of today, they're still being deprived of the right to go to the cemetery. Every time they go, they are under the watchful eyes of the public security officials. They can't do it freely. And this year, Madam Ding Jilin was forced to remain in Wuxi. She couldn't return to Beijing. So even for the Tiananmen mothers, they're being suppressed. They're not allowed to sweep the tomb. For the June 4th forum, 5 participants, Pei-chun, Guo Jian, Hu Shigen, Liu Di, 5 of them were arrested, as well as Xu Youyu. Well, Pu Zhiqiang is still being detained for picking quarrels and provoking trouble. So we have said that they don't allow us to remember. They want to suppress everything. They want to brainwash us. They don't allow any memory of this sort. Any discussion will be suppressed. But at the same time, they don't allow us to remember, but they also don't have the courage. They dare not forget it. They don't want to see the spark of democracy starting to fire, and therefore all the activists, all the human rights activists, all the dissidents have to be silenced. Well, as far as suppressing human rights is concerned, in the past year, things were at its worst. You come to remember this. The New Citizen Movement was merely advocating something that President Xi was doing, that is declaration of one's assets and also against corruption, etc. They are just humble requests, and yet the New Citizen Movement is totally suppressed, and Xu Zhiyong has already been sentenced to serve in the prison. And then a former SCMP reporter was arrested. Gao Yu was accused of leaking official secrets, but in fact she was only making known document number 9 about the 7 subversive influences. But still she was not allowed to do this, and so she was arrested so as to threaten the press. So they are abusing the arrest mechanism. They just arrest indiscriminately so as to suppress the activists. So you can really see that they dare not forget it. But I really want to put this question to Xi Jinping. What are you afraid of? If it is really true that China is in a very good shape, then why is it that we are not allowed to talk about June 4th? If people's livelihood has been improved, what is Xi Jinping afraid of? Why is it that even if we want to speak up, even if the human rights activists would like to do something, you still have to suppress them? Tang Jingling, Huang Kin-yuen, and Yun, the 3 of them, were recently arrested. Again, they were accused of trying to subvert the state power. So what are they afraid of? Why are they so afraid of the people? So we can see that the crackdown is no longer the crackdown that took place 25 years ago. The crackdown is still in existence. And of course, the fight, the struggle has never stopped. Before the June 4th, there were many challenges. We have the June 4th truth. They said that even the military had casualties. And how come that the alliance did not mention it? Well, if they talked about the truth of June 4th, we also want to talk about the truth of the June 4th. But the Chinese Communist Party is the one that is hiding the truth. So if we want to get to the truth, we want to have an investigation and disclosure of the truth. That's our request, and that's the request of Tiananmen mothers. I understand that Letica Lee said that we should use the money to do some research instead of spending the money on the museum. How can we carry out a research? Can we get records from the CCP? It's absurd. Patrick Cole Yuk-man said that why would we be talking about the casualties of the common people but not the military as well? Why we talked about the curfew but not about other things? Well, if there is a curfew, does it mean that even with the opposition and disagreement, they would not stop it and they can be justified to open fire? I don't think so. I think this is being cold-blooded. So this year, you see that we have got sort of alternative views. But for the so-called alternative views, I really want to know if they know the truth. Yes, of course, there are other criticisms, saying that we are being ceremonial, we are only going through the motion. What's wrong with the rituals? What's wrong with the ceremonial parts? We are doing this out of respect. Of course, we'll try to be open-minded, and but we won't give up the candle ritual. And if we hold a ceremony, if we have the rituals so as to express our sentiments, I think it is right. And then for the statement that we would like to vindicate June 4th, we are not begging for the mercy. We are making a request. We request the administration to admit the wrongdoing, the evil doing, and we want to hold those responsible accountable. So it's a matter of asking for those who ordered the massacre to be accountable. We also talk about releasing the dissidents, but does it mean that we give recognition to the administration? No. I think it's a matter of, in the light of the crackdown, the bloody crackdown that took place, the administration owes us the duty to give an apology. Thank you. And now put the question to you, and that is the motion moved by Hon LEE Cheuk-yan be passed.
Mr. James Tian. Mr. Deputy, at this time every year, the Legislative Council moves a motion on June 4th. This has been done many years, but the Liberal Party has never avoided the motion. We still treat it with a sincere and solemn attitude. We do the same this year. Mr. Deputy, this is the 25th anniversary of June 4th. Many years have passed, however, I still think many people still regard it as a tragedy. I also truly believe that every patriotic Chinese person would not like to see the tragedy recur. But as to the entire incident and why it evolved into a bloody tragedy, we still do not know all the details. Many people have different interpretation of the incident. But no matter what, the Liberal Party is of the view that history will tell the truth. But we should not just stay in the past. We should look forward. We hope there will be developments in the country. In fact, in the past 20, 30 years, we can see that the country has really developed very much, and people's livelihood has improved, and our national power has also risen. The world economy is developing very slowly, and the European and US economies are not really recovering. According to IMF, the world economy growth rate was only 2.9% last year. When the overall economic situation is not good, even if the Chinese economy will slow a little, it's still recording a 7.5% growth. The performance is really good. And this kind of growth will allow people in the country to have higher standards of living, medical and housing and education services. Compared to 25 years ago, people live much better now in China. At the same time, last year, the import-export value of China has risen by 7.6%. It was for the first time that it exceeded the total amount of import-export of the U.S., and it is now the biggest country trading in goods. Apart from the economy, in terms of infrastructure, science, research, aviation, science, the country has performed excellently to show that the combined national power is continuously rising and it has attracted the attention of the entire world. Moreover, since the fifth generation leaders took office, there has been new reform introduced into the administration. Now the central authorities emphasize frugality. It is against extravagance. It is also doing a lot to combat corruption. It is hitting the sharks and also the fries. So it is winning the support of the public. In the past year, we could see that really high-ranking officials had already also been caught for corruption. Until now, at least over a dozen such officials are investigated by the Central Disciplinary Committee. Therefore, we can see that at the social, economic, and also political levels, the country is improving. I'm sure there is a lot more space for the country to do better in. Mr. Deputy, a quarter century has passed since June 4th, but we know many Hong Kong people still cannot get over it. They still remember it dearly in their hearts. They still have distrust and suspicion towards the central authorities. I have to emphasize that the Liberal Party is not asking you to forget about June 4th. I just want to say we should in a way leave it behind us, and let us try to open up the door for communication with the central authorities. Mr. Deputy, this is an important year for Hong Kong's political reform. The different parties in the council here and all sectors in the community should try to agree to disagree and try to forge a consensus. We may not have the final resultant option to our liking, but let us put our prejudices aside and look at the overall good of Hong Kong and support the 2017 universal suffrage to return the CE, because it's always good to take one step forward instead of just marking time. With these remarks, we will again abstain from voting on the motion. Mr. Peter Chung Kwok-chi. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. 180,000 candles were lit in Victoria Park this year. On June 4th, 1989, it was the saddest day for Chinese people. I'm sure members who are here had experienced the same pain in 1989. We were sad about China. We were angry about the massacre. We were proud of the students. Now, 25 years have passed and times have changed. Many members who are in or not in this chamber and many officials and even the CE have forgotten about their signing co-signed statements in newspapers back then. It doesn't matter if you have forgotten, but history will remember. Many activists of June 4th have been in exile for many years, and even now they cannot go back to their homeland to be reunited with their families. Some are under house arrest by the Communist Party. They are under surveillance unreasonably, and they live in the lowest stratum in the society. And a lot of them live in regret, and some of them died before June 4th was vindicated. I am older than 60 years. I can be said to be the older generation who have experienced June 4th. Our generation still believe that before we leave this world, we'll still be able to see vindication for June 4th. Somebody said, this is only a dream. It is a very expensive dream, but I beg to differ. There was bloody suppression, and there are these scenes of tanks rolling over people. I can still hear the gunshots. 25 years have passed, but our heart has not changed because of the passing of time. In recent years, on June 4th, you can see the younger generation succeeding our efforts. The hard work of the alliance and the support of the people have meant that the June 4th Memorial Museum have been built by receiving donations of the public. We are really passing the baton on. I can see that people's hope are still alive. I can also see that justice is treasured by the community. I'm sure this autocratic, bloody suppression will be vindicated. In recent months, Pu Zhiqiang, Xu Zhiyong, and many other activists have been caught and imprisoned. This tells us once again that the Chinese government refuses to face up to this part of its history. And if it does that, there will be no true democracy in China. Suppression, autocracy, and tragedies of the government standing on the opposite side of the people, these will continue, and corruption will eat into the fabrics of society. Over the 25 years, the autocratic rule has not done less to suppress the people. But then Hong Kong people have refused to forget. And of course, people are preventing the younger generation from knowing about the June 4th incident in China. But it is clear that they will not win the battle because people's conscience cannot be cheated. For Hong Kong, we have been working very hard in order to carry on with the June 4th memorial activities. The candlelight asking for vindication of June 4th will not be suppressed. The candlelight to commemorate June 4th will continue because our young people have succeeded our efforts. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. I support the motion.
Ms. Sit-ho. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Just now, there was some light here, but then the light had to be put off because of the rules. But I want to say that the light will remain forever in our hearts. And every year, we'll see more candles, more light. Now, every year we talk about remembering and forgetting. History may be forgotten by some. Mistakes as a result may be repeated. This book was written by Mr. Lee Ho, and it's called The Road to Reunification. And he wrote about 1989 in his book. He said there was a political storm in Beijing and Hong Kong was seriously affected. So the students' democratic movement in 1989 was summarized in just these words. So you can see that the truth may be concealed. History may be forgotten. And that's why every year we have the candlelight vigil at Victoria Park. This is because we want the candlelight vigil to be covered by the media. We hope to have such records put down year after year. In 1989, there was a democracy movement because the students were angry about corruption. I want to tell the younger generation that at that time, the students were against high-ranking officials using buying goods and products at very low prices and selling them at excessively high prices. So those people, those officials abused their powers. They were corrupt, and the people suffered. And then
At that time, there were some people who worked in towns, and they were paid by some written records. But then with those written records, they could not get cash in their home villages. So it's similar to a situation where for the MPF, for those who contribute to MPF, they discovered that most of their contributions have been taken up as administrative fees. So at that time, there were criticisms, there was objection, and then force was used to suppress the movement. Some said that without this oppression, in 1989, the country would not have developed at such a pace. Yes, GDP has risen, but then we've seen more corruption, more abuse of power. And those in power are making use of their power even more to stop people from uncovering or revealing their corrupt practices. Hu Jia was concerned because some farmers sold their blood and contracted HIV. And then there was Zhao Lianhai, whose son was affected by the so-called poisoned milk powder of a baby formula. We can see that more Beijing officials have come to Hong Kong, and as a result, it seems that in Hong Kong we have a revival of corruption. We can all remember what Donald Tsang did, what Pei-chun did. He had some conflicts of interest in NT Northeast, and then Chi-wai had unauthorized structures at his mansion, and also Timothy Tong was also involved in some improper acts. So in 1989, the same ruling regime was greedy, and it was corrupt, and as a result there was the problem of the wealth gap. So I don't think it's realistic to expect this ruling regime to exercise self-discipline. Do you know that in Hong Kong, when they say they fight corruption, they are in fact using this as a pretext to combat and suppress their political enemies. In Hong Kong, when Henry Tang had illegal structures at his mansion, action was taken against him, but then Chi-wai had the same problem and nothing was done against him. So we need to have freedom of the press, we need to have monitoring of the government. But in Beijing, there is no democracy, no press freedom, no judicial independence. So, in fact, we may have one corrupt group replacing another at the leadership. So we have journalists being arrested, lawyers being arrested, lawyers who defend the lawyers being arrested, and the new generation of leaders are no better than the last ruling leadership, Hu and Wen. And so in Hong Kong, we should start from Hong Kong. We have to fight for a democratic political system. If Hong Kong people want to be able to choose their own CE in the CE election, if we want to fight corruption, then we should join the march on the 1st of July. As we can still exercise these rights, we should treasure these rights, and we should make our voices heard. Mr. K.K. Kwok, this is the 25th anniversary of the June 4th incident, and I believe Hong Kong people cannot forget what happened in that year, on that day. We saw on TV what happened on Chang'an Street, Chang'an Jie.
there were people who were injured, there were people who were killed, and then Yuan Mu and other senior officials blatantly told lies, and Hong Kong people were infuriated. June 4th has linked the hearts of people in the mainland with the hearts of Hong Kong people. I think June 4th has strengthened this tie. The pro-democracy movement started and then ended in tragedy. Hong Kong people were heavily involved. At that time, Lee Cheuk-yan personally brought Hong Kong people's cash contributions to the mainland. We were proud because we were able to support the democracy cause in the mainland. We have never regretted what we did at that time. Mr. James Tian has quoted a number of figures. He mentioned GNP or GDP of 4 trillion. But I want to give you another figure. Now, in the British Virgin Islands, according to some reports, there is an amount of 3,000 billion US dollars there, and the money belongs to the senior officials. So we can see that, in fact, the corruption we saw 25 years ago has not disappeared. And in fact, corruption has become more blatant, more rampant. And recently, we've seen on the internet that there was a rich child of senior Chinese officials spending money lavishly in Vancouver. You know, in China, there are many people who are very poor. There are many children who don't have shoes. There are many people who are ill, and yet they cannot get medical care. They can't afford medical care. And yet we have the children of senior officials driving luxury cars in Europe and sipping very expensive red wine in the US or in Europe. This year marks the 25th anniversary of June 4th. Not too long ago, Xi Jinping paid a visit to Germany. He, in fact, planned to visit the museum, the Massacres Museum, and but then of course no arrangement was made for him to do that because of certain reasons. And he said that a country which had forgotten its history, had no future. So in fact, he was trying to criticize Japan's failure to face its past mistakes. He was trying to criticize Japan for having failed to apologize to Asian people. But look at the Chinese Communist Party. It has forgotten about the June 4th massacre. When Mr. Xi Jinping's dad celebrated his 85th birthday, Xi said that his dad was honest and frank, and his dad never told lies, and he had to follow his dad's example. But as soon as he assumed office, he has been telling lies. Now, he has never sought to vindicate the June 4th movement. In fact, he is very high-handed and
and he has been arresting the Democrats. In 1989, his dad told the other elders not to criticize Hu Yaobang. And when Zhao Ziyang passed away, Xi's parents sent a wreath to send condolences to Zhao's family. So his parents were courageous enough to do such things, but then Xi Jinping, I think, hasn't really followed the example of his parents. Before June 4th this year, Zhiyong, the five gentlemen, and then journalists were arrested. But I don't think Hong Kong people and Chinese people will ever forget June 4th. Their conviction will become stronger in the face of strong oppression. So we want to tell this high-handed regime that we will never give up and back down.
Fernando Cheung, thank you, Mr. Deputy. The June 4th incident happened 25 years ago. This year marks the 25th anniversary. Dr. Kwok Ka-kai has referred to Xi Jinping, our president. He visited Germany recently. He said a country must face up to its own history. If a race or country is not bold enough to face history, the country or the race has no future. This year, the 25th anniversary of the June 4th incident, our national leader said this in another country. I don't know whether he feels any shame or not. Well, China is now refusing to face its own history. The history of the slaughter of her own people. This is a painful experience. China is not facing up to this history. So there's no question of learning from history. In Hong Kong, many people would say that people are polarized. The Democrats are more radical. How radical can we be? How can we be more radical than a country slaughtering her own people? How radical can we be when compared with the slaughter of students, unarmed students, by the country's army? Mr. James Tin says things are not clear. We cannot get to the bottom of the matter. We don't have anyone from the pro-establishment camp. Only Martin Liu is here. Would they be facing to this, facing up to this incident? Will Mr. Xi Jinping be really willing to face it? The regime is cold-blooded. It's a disgrace in the history of humankind. It's the manifestation of evil in the higher sense. Will they face it? This year, on June 4th, in the candlelight vigil on the 4th of June, we invited Mr. Teng Biao. He said something very meaningful. I was outside manning a station, but I read it later. I was moved. So I would like to refer to his speech. The victims of the June 4th incident die for us. They die for every survivor. And that's in our lives, that death is part of our lives. If we do not understand this, we do not understand ourselves or China in which we live. Therefore, we have a responsibility to remember the massacre. We have a responsibility to ask for justice. We have the responsibility to bear the torch of these heroes who fell for us. Indeed, the victims die for us because their cause is our cause. We would, one generation after another, strive to achieve the same goal. Mr. Teng Biao also said, we must tell the world 25 years have passed, but the massacre didn't stop in 1989. They used various excuses, unification, harmony, killing has never been stopped. Mr. Wang Weilin, who tried to stop the tanks, disappeared without a trace. There were other Wang Weilins who have been killed. There are people living in detention centers, prisons, people trying to seek redress in the capital, Tibetan people fleeing, people resisting unlawful demolition, people resisting the population, pregnant women refusing to have an abortion, Li Wangyang, and other people have all become victims. Mr. Liu Duxun has been detained for 25 years. He's still in jail. Our lives contain the tragedy in 1989. Every day there are people who lose their freedom. Liu Xiaobo, Qin Yuming, Hu Jia, Liu Yanbin, Yili Hamu, Xu Zhiyong, and so on and so forth. Starting from March last year, more than 300 people who tried to safeguard people's rights have been arrested. This is now, the regime is now trying to arrest people. They arrest reporters, and then they report those reporters trying to defend the arrested reporters, and then they try to arrest, they arrested lawyers defending the reporters, and then they arrest the lawyers defending the arrested lawyers. As the slogan goes, they can't kill us all. We must stand out. Just like Li Wangyang has once said, I will not go back even if I'm going to be killed. That's what Mr. Teng Biao said. I hope our leaders and Hong Kong people will face history itself. The history is still in the making. We now face the threat of the white paper in the constitutional development. We are facing persecution. We must stand up. We are in the same boat as our compatriots. We thank the people giving us encouragement from the mainland. We'll continue to strive for justice. The June 4th victims, incident victims, died for us. We must continue to remember the June 4th incidents. We should never forget it. Dr. Helena Wong, the June 4th incident has passed for 25 years. Every year, the Pan-Democrats will have a debate. And would the camera please pan over those seats? There's nothing. There's no one from the pro-establishment camp. I thank Mr. Liu for staying behind. Is this because they are afraid that should they be found seated here, they would be regarded as in support of remembering the June 4th incident? Or have they been instructed by the CPG not to be here? This year, we remember the 25th anniversary of the June 4th incidents. 180,000 people attended the candlelight vigil in Victoria Park. Every candlelight is just like a tear was very moving and touching. Hong Kong people have not forgotten what happened 25 years ago in Beijing, in Tiananmen Street, and also in Chang'an Street, and the area in Beijing, in vicinity. Brutal force was used by the Beijing authorities to crack down on this peaceful protest of students. The students were unarmed. Those who tried to stop the tanks were also unarmed. Many scholars who look into this incident have pointed out that during the protest there were no crime, because people were so moved by the young students and workers and unsung heroes who came out for one purpose, not to overturn the communist regime. No one said anything against communism or socialism. They just held high the banner of patriotism. They asked for a humble objective. They wanted the leaders to talk to them. They wanted the country to face up to the problems in the opening up process, including corruption, spiraling prices, officials involved in speculation, and they also wanted democratic reform, education reform, and they pointed out that teachers were paid so poorly. All these aspirations are very humble indeed, but unfortunately, the senior people in the Communist Party decided to clamp down on the protests with force. We have not forgotten the incident. This is part of our collective memory. Although someone has tried to erase the memory. In the Victoria Park on the 4th of June, there were many people holding candles, and outside Victoria Park, there's a so-called patriotic organization trying to sell a different story from us. They played video recordings saying that on the 4th of June at Tiananmen Square, there was no death. The PLA did not kill anyone, and there were students saying that they left peacefully. They also said that if it were not for the determined action taken by the CCP, we wouldn't have the economic miracle in the ensuing 25 years. Well, this is a chilling message that they are trying to disseminate. Although we don't know now how many people died at Tiananmen Square. But if you say no one died there, all students left peacefully, it didn't mean that no one was killed in the vicinity of Tiananmen Square. We want to overturn the verdict on, we want to vindicate the June 4th incident. We want to find out the truth. Many people died near Tiananmen Square because of they were shot or because they tried to stand in front of tanks. And we were told that they used a bullet that was banned internationally, which would explode inside your body, and once you are shot, you would certainly die. Can all the blood be erased by such patriotic people outside Victoria Park and by playing videos clips to people? And we also have this organization, Tiananmen Mothers. Their grievances have yet to be addressed. I don't think anyone would think that they were making up stories that their sons were killed near Tiananmen Square. I don't think anyone would believe that their children died 25 years ago, before or after or on the 4th of June. These mothers are our witnesses. Why do we have to return to this council every year to have a debate? Because if we don't say anything about the incident, there are people who try to surreptitiously erase the memory from our history. We are proud of Hong Kong people at the same time. With regard to the small minority of people who are trying to deceive us, we have to show our despise on them. Today, we're not just concerned about our democratic future. We are also concerned about the future of China. If China is not democratic, it would be more difficult for us to strive for democracy. But we cannot wait until China becomes democratic and then we fight for our democracy. We hope the CPG would respect our wishes for genuine universal suffrage. Let's go take to the street on the 1st of July.
Mr. Gary Fan, this is the 25th anniversary of the June 4th massacre. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered at Tiananmen back there to fight corruption, to fight for democracy and freedom. However, with the crackdown by the Chinese Communist Party, many young lives were lost. They were at the prime of their age. They were young, they have never enjoyed their youth, they had not completed their studies, and they were still courting. And then they could not wait to finish all these. They lost their lives when tanks and bullets came to take their lives. 25 years have elapsed. Corruption, suppression, cracking down on human rights and civil rights are even worse than ever in Beijing. According to a survey by International Journalists Association, Xi Jinping, Deng Xiaoping, Hu Jintao, their families and relatives have got companies, offshore companies in BC Island, which is haven for tax evasion. I think that is just the tip of the iceberg. According to news reports, a small official in a village on the mainland could have billions of dollars, and we can understand that the Chinese Communist Party is rotten to its bones. Since the opening up and reforms of China, corrupt officials have transferred capital to overseas, and according to news reports, that is to the tune of tens of hundreds of billion dollars. Well, these are just figures. They can tell you lives sacrificed on the mainland, broken families, and also young people who have a difficult future ahead of them. This will have a major impact on the fate of a nation. Young workers jumped to take their lives. China is just a big sweatshop. Many grassroots laborers have toiled in these factories, and their earnings have gone into the pockets of the privileged and the rich. Since the 6/4 incident, corruption among officials have just aggravated. There is not an inch of improvement in terms of human rights. Li Wangyang, we all know well, was imprisoned for 20 years because of his support for the democratic movement. By the time he was released, he was deaf, he was blind, he was crippled, and this elderly man, because he was interviewed on the subject of the June 4th incident, he was murdered and his body was burned even without the consent of his family members. In 2008, Lau Xiaobo, he drafted the 2008 Charter, and then he was sentenced to 11 years of prison for subversion. If you fight for political reforms, you are subverting the country. And Xia Jinfeng, a hawker, killed a city management staff to defend himself. He was killed, and he was not allowed to take a photo before he died with his family members. We are told that the Chinese nation is now up and rising to become a strong nation. Whether you're just an honorary member of the public or a civil rights champion, now you will be living in deep waters. And the Chinese Communist Party are sitting on huge reserves. They, by taking away money from the people on the mainland, they use force to rule blatantly. Those who are dissidents or refuse to obey will be tortured. And in Hong Kong, people are packaged into advocates of the rich and influential, and they sit here to act as advocates of these people, to make laws that favors these people. They're using the institution to harm people. There is no bloodshed. It may not be observable, but you can all feel the pain. President, of course, I dare not hope that what I say here can change the situation on the mainland, or to bring about a change in the Chinese Communist Party, because we cannot wake up someone who is pretending to be fast asleep. We cannot change a dictatorship that is riding a roughshod on its people. Now, I think what happened back then is a warning for us. The white paper on one country, two system has been published, saying that there is a total administration power over Hong Kong. They are trying to push this on us, and we must be in control of our own fate. We should not look to the mercy of the privilege. We should not wait for other people to fight for us. Only if we have equal participation rights in politics that we can fight against the dictatorship of the minority. Now, please don't think that so long as you work hard to make money, you won't be suppressed, you won't be bullied. It's been 25 years since the June 4th incident. The Chinese government has refused to face up to what happened, and victims remain to be vindicated. I don't want the same tragedy to happen in Hong Kong. To commemorate June 4th, to remember the victims, is to uphold justice and to protect freedom of assembly and expression in Hong Kong. A nation that forgets history has no hope. A society that belittles history has no future. We must remember the pro-democratic movement of the June 4th. We must learn from history. Thank you, President. Mr. Albert Ho. Thank you, President. This is the 24th anniversary of the June 4th incident. 180,000 people turned out at the candlelight vigil in Victoria Park. Once again, we made history. I was on the stage and I saw a sea of lights and also passionate participants. We were both touched and sad and angry. We were touched because although a quarter of a century has elapsed, although Hong Kong is still under the dictatorship of the Chinese Communist Party, the people of Hong Kong have still refused to forget June 4th. We still want to defend the truth of history. We tried to say no to those in power who would like to distort history. So with our conscience and courage, we have written history. And it will remain an important record in history to be remembered as a Chinese citizen and as a world citizen. We have every responsibility to shoulder this responsibility of history. We were angry and sad, because there was a galaxy of candlelight and there were songs being sung there. And yet, over in Beijing, it was pitch dark. It was completely silent. A pro-democracy student movement that lasted for a few months took place 25 years ago. It was a major incident, but it ended up with a bloodshed massacre by the Chinese army. Chinese people and Beijing residents can never forget this tragedy. Never. Although they've lived under the white terror of the Chinese Communist Party, and people there cannot commemorate the event. And Tiananmen mothers who've lost their sons were subject to a lot of hindrances and obstacles when they wanted to remember their children at a cemetery. They wanted to remember their children at Chang'an Street. They were not allowed to do that. For those who have gone through that period of history would never forget what happened. However, those in power would not allow the community to debate in public or to find out the truth about what happened. They wanted people to gradually forget history. They want the younger generation to know nothing about what happened on June 4th. All these are meant to destroy history. This is equivalent to what the right-wing Japanese government has been doing. They want to wipe out the history of Nanjing massacre. There are so much emotions involved in the June 4th incident, 1989. Every family that has gone through that stretch of history would pass down this memory orally. And the message will be passed down to the next generation. The people will not forget. Those in power on the mainland would not forget either. They've been living under the shadow of June 4th, and they have lived in fear. Let's see how they have tried to suppress and crack down on collective memories among the people. Like Li Wangyang, he was just an ordinary citizen. He was persecuted, and he was said to have committed suicide. And even if you wanted, even Tao Zhiqiang, who wanted to take part in private discussions of the incident, was jailed and sentenced. And Tang Jingnian, who once gave assistance to Li Wangyang, has also been prosecuted, and he might be convicted for trying to subvert the country. The whole government worked under the instruction of Deng Xiaoping, and all chaos or riots must be nipped at its bud. And Shi Jiyun, Guo Feilong, and also Tan Zhuoren, who wanted to find out about the substandard works at Chi-chuen, they've been persecuted, and they are expanding their powers and control. And human rights persons, well, they wanted to fight for the interests, the basic rights of people in terms of education, medical and health care. Well, a government that is the enemy of the people cannot be stable. It cannot rule forever. Together with Chinese people and for all international or global citizens that have conscience. We will uphold justice. We will start with the vindication of the June 4th incident, and we would try to establish a democratic China.
Mr. Charles Mock, as I speak now, there is not a single member from the loyalist camp, but I'm not going to call them back. There's no point imposing it on them. Now, it's 3 weeks since the 25th anniversary of the June 4th incident, but we still attach importance to this debate. Last night, some Hong Kong people in the USA sent me mail. One was called Dennis. He said he knew we were having this debate today, and he said that the June 4th incident happened 25 years ago, but there are still government officials trying to distort the truth, both in Hong Kong and in China. That's why it's important that we mention June 4th again so the younger generation knows about the truth. He said there's some Hong Kong colleague in the U.S. Who never cared much about the June 4th incident, but this year he's asked to borrow a T-shirt because there are many more and more mainlanders working in the same company. Those are in the 80s and 90s. They know nothing about June 4th. That's why he had to put up the Wen Wei-pao reports or other reports, press reports on, so people can see and young people learn about it. And others have also become aggressive because they hear people like Robert Chow and others telling the purported truth of the June 4th incident. They couldn't take it anymore. 25 years ago, we saw what happened on TV, and there was account given by those at the scene. We know quite well what the truth is, but then some might think that because it was 25 years ago, our memory has faded, especially the younger people. They could be easily influenced, and so they could distort the truth. But what exactly is the truth of June 4th is easy for anyone to say, but here, I've got this book, Tiananmen Papers. The Chinese translation is called The Truth of June 4th. There are two well-known overseas Chinese scholars, Andrew Layton and Wei Nong. They have actually sifted through, they have collected over 1,000 articles, documents, state council documents and military regions, reports, and so on. And they have then written this book. I don't know those who say they know about the truth of the June 4th incident, how they find out. They said no one was killed at the square. There was no showering of bullets on the people. But then if you refer to this book, between the 19th and 21st of June at the extended Central Committee meeting, there was a report on casualties and fatalities. Now, this is the English version.
The Beijing municipality has checked and double-checked all figures from the Martial Law Command, the Public Security Ministry, the Chinese Red Cross, all institutions of higher education and all major hospitals. These show that 241 people died. They included 23 officers and soldiers from the martial law troops and 218 civilians. The book goes on to explain that Li Ximing's figure need to be viewed together with other reports about deaths of soldiers, citizens, and students. Materials from the martial law headquarters, for example, show that no member of the troops that advanced on the city the night of June 3rd was killed by city residents, and no soldier from the 38th Army, which was responsible for clearing the square, died on June 3rd. Of the 10 PLA soldiers who lost their lives and were later honored as defenders of the Republic, 6 were from the 38th Army, but these men died when their military transport truck overturned about 2 a.m. The deaths of these 6 soldiers cannot properly be described as murdered by rioters. A report from the Beijing Public Security Bureau said those killed included university professors, technical people, officials, workers, owners of small private businesses, retired workers, high school students, grade school students, of whom the youngest was 9 years old. To judge from this distribution of age and occupations, from retired old ladies to a 9-year-old child, it would seem likely that the great majority of these people were innocent of any crime. 李石明係邊個呢？趙紫陽佢個
Who's Li Shiming? In Zhao Ziyang's memoir, he said that on the 24th of April at the Standing Committee meeting, he said that this student movement was premeditated. It was a conspiracy to overthrow the Communist Party. Li Peng, Li Shiming, and Chen Xitong were the one who started all this. And then from the information here, we saw that the son-in-law of Bo Yibo, he was already the deputy chairman of the Standing Committee. He was killed too at Mu Sidi because he just turned on the light. He was looking out from his window, and then he was killed. And then his number was counted towards the number of murders committed by mobsters. So this is what we call the truth. That is, the state takes premeditated steps to slaughter innocent civilians. That's why a friend asked me to put this question to the loyalist camp. If your family member were a victim of the June 4th incident, would you still vote against this motion or abstain from voting? Of course, now I'm looking at some 30, 40 empty seats as I pose this question. None of them is here. So the June 4th incident is the best way to show whether we have conscience or not. Mr. President, with these remarks, I support the motion. Let us see what the vote is like, how members will vote later on. Thank you. Professor Joseph Lee. President, 25 years ago, I'm sure Hong Kong people knew very well what happened in Beijing then. Now, today is the 25th of June, and as I said, we are several weeks now from June 4th. Yes, this debate has been delayed, but the fact, the history that happened 25 years ago, I'm sure is still vivid in our mind. We won't forget it. Every year around this time in May or June, on the mainland, there would be a number of high-handed measures and policies to try to suppress any talk or debate about what happened on June 4th. Now, I don't know if it really works, this kind of tactic, because I don't live on the mainland, but what is obvious is that about the truth of the June 4th incident. Obviously, they're trying to make this generation forget about it. And for the next generation, they try to leave a void here, so they know nothing about it. That's what they try to do on the mainland. Now, I'm from Hong Kong. Before the handover or after handover, it's been 17 years, actually. Every year around this time, we know we have this duty to tell the people of Hong Kong that we must preserve this history. We must preserve the facts. The candlelight, at the 25th anniversary candlelight vigil this year, we saw 180,000 people at Victoria Park lighting up the candles. And we saw many of them were young people. Many probably weren't even born 25 years ago, so they didn't know what happened then. But then because our generations worked very hard to tell them about it. For example, just now Mr. Charles Mok read out the truth from this book. So we try to tell young people this is what happened 25 years ago. These are facts. And there's no way, there's no policy, no measure you could take to try to say this has not happened. This year, I see an interesting phenomenon. As Mr. Charles Mok pointed out, there have been more different voices coming up. Some have come up to say that this was not happened 25 years ago. The army had no choice but to open fire. The tanks, maybe it's because the person who was in control of the tank was not trained. That's why he ran over people. Maybe it's just our illusion. Who knows? But anyway, these are the this is the distorted truth. But I think for our generation, our next generation in Hong Kong, we will not trust such distorted arguments. What's good about Hong Kong is that we are able to freely pass on the truth about this June 4th massacre from one generation to another. It doesn't matter what those in power in the Communist Party say. In Hong Kong, we still can take advantage of our speech freedom to preserve the history, so our future generation will know about it. Of course, we also have hope that those who've been aggrieved by the June 4th incident, young people who were killed, those who were involved, we hope there will be vindication for them. We don't know whether we can do it within this generation. If not, we still have our next generation. So that's exactly what's good and appealing about Hong Kong. Now, we're still in June. Today we have this solemn debate about the June 4th incident. It doesn't matter who follows this debate. What is important is that for the Pan-Democrats, we have the duty to repeat the truth again and again. So Hong Kong people would know this is the truth. This is the fact. These are the facts. Just now, some people have given a distorted picture, but could that change the facts? No. So in Hong Kong, what's good about us is that we could preserve this historical facts. And we know that 25 years ago, the Chinese government did something it should not do, that is to kill its own people. Thank you.
Mr. Dennis Kwok. Thank you, Mr. President. 25 years have passed, but the Central People's Government still would not investigate into the matter so as to vindicate the dead. To the nation, to the dead, to the families of the deceased, to those who are concerned, to all the Chinese people, I think it's a time for mourning. The CPG, of course, knows that this is a very special year, and therefore Hu Jie, a famous human rights activist, said rightly that for this year the suppression was unprecedented in Beijing. Pei-chun, a human rights lawyer, took part in a June 4th forum marking the 25th anniversary in Beijing in May this year. And then he was arrested for picking quarrels and for unlawfully getting personal information. He was arrested for such fabricated charges. Another person arrested was lawyer Xu Zhiyong. He has been thrown into jail. For what offense? Why? Why has he been sent to prison for 4 years? I would like to quote from his final submission in his own trial. I just want to quote from his own words. Freedom, justice, love are our core values, the guiding principles for our action. The new citizen movement advocates that every citizen should start from himself, from small things, from changing specific public policies. We make a start. I want to ask this question. From such a final submission, which talks about the content of the new citizen movement, what wrong has he committed? What is wrong with that? Xu Zhiyong and Pu Zhiqiang, both of them are lawyers. They are in the legal profession. They have their own families. And at the university, they both read law. I'm in the same profession. But honestly, I don't have the same courage as theirs to do what they have done. They are lawyers, and they are able to come forward with such courage to face the regime. What about our legal profession in Hong Kong? What should we do? Mr. President, the CPG has changed its policies. it isn't just a matter for the dissidents on the mainland. I think the CPG has also changed its policies towards Hong Kong. The same thing is that when it wants to suppress freedom, when it wants to narrow the scope of democracy, then the first to bear the brunt will be the legal profession, and the legal profession will be very sensitive to this, and they will have very strong views. In fact, the CPG has said that it will be ruling the country according to the law, but then it is the place where we have the least respect for the rule of law. Now, the legal professionals will easily show up the lack of the rule of law, and therefore the human rights lawyers on the mainland have suffered most. In Hong Kong, again, the CPG would like to crack down on the legal profession. Looking back, I think it is not that difficult to understand why they have made such comments, say, for example, in the form of the white paper on the implementation of one country, two systems. They spent so much effort on criticizing the legal profession, the judiciary being lumped together with the others, and they are called the team of governance, and they are asked to maintain stability and prosperity and national security. I think the line of thought is similar, sounds similar. In year 2008, that's what the then Vice President Xi Jinping talked about, the cooperation of the three powers. At that time, he said that the three powers should support each other. A few years have already passed. They no longer ask the administrative, the executive, and the judiciary to have mutual understanding and mutual support. Now they ask for more. They would think that the three powers are the same and they serve the same purpose. So we can see that the Central People's Government would like to destroy the independence of the judiciary. Now, they want to turn their verbal requests into something in black and white in the form of the white paper. Mr. President, I think this is a telltale sign. Well, this is the 25th anniversary of June 4th. We have the worst suppression on the human rights activists, and we have 180,000 people lighting the candles in Victoria Park. What about the representatives of our legal profession? What can they do? Honestly, I'm afraid I don't have the courage of Hu Zhiqiang and Xu Zhiyong, but at least I can do the least that a lawyer can do. That is, on Friday, on the 27th of June at 5:30 p.m. We'll go to the High Court, and then we will walk in silence. There will be a march in silence. We'll tell the government, we'll tell the international community what we think about the rule of law, one country, two systems, Hong Kong people in Hong Kong, high degree of autonomy. We are not going to budge at all. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Mr. President. This is the 25th anniversary of the bloody crackdown on June 4th. We don't want to recall, and yet we cannot forget it. 25 years ago, the CCP used violence to crack down on the innocent students and citizens who were unarmed. You may very well say that it's all a story made up by the Western forces. We've been asked to forget the history. We have been asked to forget all about this. Some people have been selective in terms of their memory. They chose not to remember what they saw with their own eyes. I would like to read from two advertisements. Mr. Chi-wai Leung, our current CE, in the year 1989, said that he deeply mourned those Beijing citizens, and he seriously condemned the crackdown on the people. And he sent his greatest respect to all the staff of the Wen Hui Bao, and also FTU also had a statement about the crackdown. They urged the Beijing rulers to stop the suppression and the arrest in relation to the students and people who died. The FTU said that they mourned their passing away, and all the workers in Hong Kong should be mobilized to exhaust all sorts of channels so as to expose the truth of June 4th, and the truth should be told to their mainland relatives. And then all the workers should make use of all sorts of channels to mourn on the 7th of June. And then all the people of Hong Kong should remain calm-hearted, should be united so as to stabilize Hong Kong, so that rationally, peacefully, we could support the patriotic movement on the mainland. Today, Chi-wai Leung, the CE, of course, is avoiding the question. The public asked him how he would like to reflect and our message to vindicate June 4th. And then for the FTU members, they have disappeared from this chamber. The truth of history is the sharpest weapon piercing the CCP regime. Therefore, we are here to repeat time and again throughout the past 25 years what we saw about the crackdown, the suppression, the pain and suffering caused to the Chinese people. We want to leave behind our footprint in the history of China. A nation that forgets her history will be a nation that is hopeless. Unfortunately, regrettably, the Chinese regime, the CCP, have chosen to forbid the people of the mainland to remember June 4th. The regime also asks the people to forget all about it. Just now, Charles Mok told us that his American colleagues gave him the message, that is, for the young mainlanders working in the U.S., they knew nothing. They knew nothing about June 4th. Why is it that CCP wants to hide away the history? This is because the bloody suppression is supposed to be hidden away. It would like to remove this part of the history. But then, as a result of the persistence of the alliance, we have been keeping the torch, and we've been able to gather more and more people. For the first 2 years, there were over 100,000. Later on, the number of people attending dropped, but in recent years, the figure has gone up again. What does it show? It shows that when we persist, it means that there will be more and more people joining us, and they will take this very seriously. That is, in Hong Kong, we're still able to lit the light of conscience. We are fighting for democracy, and the candlelight is our hope. The candlelight also shows that the people of Hong Kong have not forgotten the bloody crackdown in the history, and also shows that the CCP's brainwashing policy doesn't work in Hong Kong. And by keeping this image, it shows that under one country, two systems, we'll treasure our freedom, so that we will do our best to keep the truth in our eyes. We hope that history will one day show that CCP has to face it, and it may also be the weapon that will bring down the CCP. Japan has been asked by the regime to respect history. Of course, the history of Nanjing massacre is something that will never go away from our memory. And we'll also ask the Japanese government to apologize and compensate us for the Nanjing massacre and to give us an answer and to respond properly. But if the Chinese regime doesn't respect its own history, how can she expect other nations in the world to echo her call and respect history? In fact, the German government after World War II chose to fully reflect on the Nazis' atrocities, but Japan hasn't done so. China hasn't done so. Your time is up. Thank you.
Mr. Yuk-man, President, there is a special significance to the commemoration of the June 4th massacre this year, not because it's because of 25 years a milestone. Rather, it is because the rise of native consciousness in Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong people began to think about their own identity and the future of democratic movement and how they can counter the position of the Chinese Communist Party. This has caused the CP to worry, and it has also created disturbance, uneasiness among the pro-democrats in Hong Kong. This year, outside the Senator Square in Tsim Sha Tsui, there were people there to commemorate the June 4th massacre. It was an option for Hong Kong people who would like to remember the tragedy and can help Hong Kong and can allow people to rethink the relationship between Hong Kong and China. However, the mainstream media and pan-democratic politicians said that it is a way to split our power against the Communist Party. That's why for more than 20 years, we have not seen any breakthrough in democratic movement in Hong Kong. These pan-democrats have no idea of the new trend. They keep saying that if China has no democracy, then we won't have democracy. They're still dreaming that big China democracy dream. Some would even betrayed Hong Kong for the sake of that dream. In May 2010, there was secret talks between the Democratic Party and CCP that introduced this fake political reform package, and Hong Kong people was robbed of their nominating power and voting power. And last December, Choi-Chung, the deputy chairman of DP and also community worker of DP, won a judicial review. As a result, new immigrants will be eligible for CCSA. This has overramped our social welfare system, and young people are starting to query the meaning of the June 4 candle vigil and whom have been lit by the candlelight. The political agents commemorated the event on stage, and then they have always adopted the same attitude. Cultural communalist on tour said in June 2nd last year that the Democratic camp wanted the open government in China to vindicate the incident, and they wanted them to take care of this complex of Hong Kong people. The pan-democratic camp have not really done their utmost to hand down this tradition of 1989 pro-democratic movement. They ask people to trust the effect of the basic law. They hope that there can be support from international friends. They have been very stubborn. They have just stuck to this approach, and that's the view of Onto. I think he has made very good observations. Many young people in Hong Kong feel that we are under the attack of China and our ways of life are threatened, and they have lost patience because the pan-democratic camp is now out of tune with their ideas, and therefore they believe that they must adopt a tough stance in order to defend their own way of life. The driving the locust campaign and various campaigns are very different from what we see in July 1st rally and the June 4th candlelight vigil. They're against integration with China or turning Hong Kong into Chinese. There is direct participation from the people. They have nothing to do with the politicians. This is a real manifestation of democratic spirit. The CCP have tried to suppress our localist movement and democratic movement without the support of this government that massacred its people. This government in Hong Kong could have been overturned. However, the members of the alliance are not willing to do that. They are not willing to shout down with the Communist Party at the June 4 vigil. They like to respond to the comments that those who rule Hong Kong must love the country and love Hong Kong. They just play to the tune of the CCP. They dare not query and say no to the legitimate right of China in ruling Hong Kong. June 4th incident, well, the meaning to Hong Kong is Hong Kong people must understand the brutal nature of the CCP. They must dare to say no to Chinese governance in Hong Kong. Lee quoted from Einstein. He said that what is schizophrenia is repeating the same thing again and again, expecting totally different results. He pointed out that there must be new thinking as far as the June 4th is concerned. I'm of the view that we must get rid of this very passive framework of the June 4th candlelight vigil. We must get rid of this great China ideology. We must join this fight against CCP before we can have democracy in Hong Kong. Down with the Chinese Communist Party. Thank you, President. Mr. Tong Yi-si. Thank you. President, this is the 25th anniversary of the June 4th incident. A quarter of a century have passed away, and I think many of us have been touched by this incident. Although there are different views and different voices about this incident, but as what the Mingpao editorialist said on the 4th of June this year, the incident started as a movement against corruption and of the government back then. And now the government or our country still needs to tackle corruption. So our focus should be to learn from history. We should continue to try to build up a clean government. The country has been so successful. We need a clean and efficient government. A government that is corrupt will seriously damage the welfare of the people. The country's development will also be greatly hampered. Chairman, from the media, I've seen how the country, how determined the country has been recently to wipe up corruption and to promote a clean government. I hope that the authorities can continue to step up efforts in its fight against corruption so as to address the people's aspiration for a clean government and clean society. This is also one of our core values in Hong Kong, and this partly contributes to the success of Hong Kong. Therefore, we must not allow a bunch of people to undermine our clean society for their own selfish goals. It is important that we have a clean society, and this is something we can take pride in. Therefore, we must firmly defend our reputation and our core values. Thank you.
Mr. Chung-kai.
Far too often, politicians give speeches that try to bend truth to fit their personal ideological leanings. Other times, perhaps far too often, we give speeches that avoid truth in its entirety by drowning it out with meaningless platitudes. This time, and for every other time this motion will appear before this Council, I say we should remember and vindicate the truth. That the 4th June incident be not forgotten and the 1989 pro-democracy movement be vindicated. I said the word should because Hong Kong is the only place in China where large-scale commemorations of Tiananmen Square tragedy are allowed. It is the only place in China where Chinese can speak for those who have been silenced by government censorships, intimidations, and imprisonments. It is the only place in China where citizens of China can shine light on those dark days in China's past, as thousands have done by igniting their individual lights in the annual candlelight vigil. It is the only place in China where citizens can remember and mitigate the truth. But it is not the only place in the world where the truth about Tiananmen Square massacre is remembered and vindicated. In Malaysia, protesters held up models of tanks covered with red paint outside the Chinese embassy in Kuala Lumpur. In Taiwan, a student group promoting democracy in China organized an event featuring activists who participated in 1989 Chinese pro-democracy movement. In the United States, the White House urged China to account for those killed and lost for the events of June 4, 1989. The United Nations admonished Chinese authorities for their detainment of individuals leading up to the 4th of June anniversary and stressed the need to establish clearer facts surrounding the events. So let us take the time to establish some facts while understanding that these facts are not enough to assuage the grief of the families of victims who are still waiting for closure regarding the fates of their loved ones. Let us take the time to remember the truth of Tiananmen massacre and add our voices to the lights to those around the world who refuse to let it be erased from the collective human consciousness. In the spring of 1989, student-led popular demonstration took place in Beijing and received broad support from the city's residents. The students occupied Tiananmen massacre for 7 weeks, provoked after the death of Wu Yao-bong, a liberal political and economic reform who have dared to criticize the party's elite corruptions. Wu had led a group of reformers deemed their rights in advocating the political liberalization and freedoms of expressions to fight against increasing nepotism and favoritisms in Chinese government and the economy. On the night of April 17th, thousands of students joined forces to draft a list of 7 demands for the government. So we remember and vindicate the 4th June incident. Let us first commemorate those who lost their lives that day, but let us also advocate for the substantive demands of that movement, ones that have still not been met to these days. Those 7 demands read: first, affirm as correct Wu Yao-bong's view on democracies and freedom, admit the campaigns against spiritual pollutions and bourgeois liberalization have been wrong. Third, publish information on the income of state leaders and their family members, end the ban on privately run newspapers and stopped press censorships. Fifth, increase funding for education and raise intellectual pace. Sixth, end restriction on demonstration in Beijing. Seventh, provide objective coverage of students in official media. Today I read these 7 demands from the students who led the charge so that we, in the present political landscape, stay steadfast in our commitments to these issues they in the past were willing to die for. namely the defense for democracies, the protection of freedoms, the defeat of corruptions, the prioritization of education, the end of censorship, the right to demonstrate. In May of that year, students started a hunger strike which spilled into further support for the pro-democracy movement from the capital city and 400 other cities by the middle of that month. On May 20th, Deng Xiaoping and other party authorities declared martial law and mobilized 300,000 troops to Beijing. On the evening of June 3rd, troops armed with assault rifles and backed by the tanks killed and injured unarmed civilians who blocked their way to Tiananmen Square. On the morning of 4th of June, the Chinese army began to seal off Tiananmen Square from residents and students, and even resorted to forces to prevent more demonstrations from entering. The students were forced to leave the square. Those who stayed were beaten and killed. The Communist Party of China claims only 241 people died that day. Experts disagree and say the death toll is between 800 and 1,500. I don't know the exact figures, but I do know that many innocent people were killed, and that night some soldiers died. Many students and protesters, leaders died, and even more workers died that night. They were killed because they were willing to stand up against the corruptions and concentration of power that requires suppression of dissenting opinions. When faced with tragedy, our first obligation is to mourn. Our second obligation is to vindicate. Apart from corroborating the authenticity of the events of that date, vindication also requires the essential element of justification. If we truly want to commemorate the students and residents who died that day, we must also say that they were the right to fight. They were right to fight for the causes they fought greater than their own lives. We must justify their actions by stating that the substance of their demands and protests still matter. Now, especially in Hong Kong, especially in this city, we face less foreboding but equally significant circumstances where the fate of democratic ideals and individuals' rights is again under contestation.
Mr. Sin, your time is up. Ms. Claudia Mo. The June 4th anniversary this year is, of course, particularly significant. It's the 25th anniversary, a quarter of a century. To many, especially my generation, the June 4th incident was a watershed. It's a watershed for our life. You know, we always say whether this person is before 1989 or after the June 4th, 1989 incident. For the student movement in 1989, those were university students, most were particularly those from students of Peking University. They were influenced by the glasnost and perestroika in Russia. These are Russian words. I learned them actually from Beijing, from the Peking University students. Many might not have taken note of that. They said they are against corruption. They are against profiteering by officials, but at the same time they're striving for press freedom. They want reporters to speak the truth. Before the June 4th, there was a really touching scene at the Tiananmen Square. All the major newspapers, People's Daily, Liberation Daily, Guangming Daily, and so on, all the editors formed a line. They walked past Tiananmen Square. They held the banner to say that we want to speak the truth. This is very touching because this is an authoritarian state, and this happened, and people thought finally we saw hope in China. But of course, from what happened afterwards, you knew this never materialized. I was a journalist at the time, and for my generation of journalists, the majority of us believe the June 4th incident gives us this lesson in Hong Kong that we must try to defend Hong Kong, preserve Hong Kong. Now, there was the exodus before 1997 in Hong Kong, people left in thrones. They were worried because they wondered what happened in 1989. There were tanks. Would tanks also come to Queen's Road Central or Devote Road? At the time, there was not this concept of Occupy Central, but it was actually like the PLA who would first occupy Central then. People were worried. So we have to defend Hong Kong. We have to defend our human rights and freedom. The most fundamental concept is the separation of powers, tripartite separation of powers. In the People's Republic of China, there is no such thing as tripartite separation of powers. Otherwise, you can't explain the story of Liu Xiaobo. He was awarded Nobel Prize for peace. It's a peace prize. It's not chemistry prize or anything. So it's people like Mother Teresa who was awarded like that. He's on the same par with people like Mother Teresa, but he's jailed, and we wonder why. Maybe many forgot the relationship between June 4th and Liu Xiaobo. Liu Xiaobo was, of course, one of the 4 gentlemen who went on a hunger strike at Tiananmen Square. He's not like those who still trying to profit from June 4th after the incident. But rather, he's an intellectual with ideals. He wants to promote democracy in China. He was a lecturer at the Normal University of Peking originally. For the June 4th student movement, they try to strive for press freedom. But what is sarcastic about it is that originally, the June 4th movement was sparked by the death of Hu Yaobang. Well, maybe many believe Hu Yaobang was a more liberal leader, a cleaner leader. He wasn't much corrupt. And Hu Yaobang was the one who made the decree to state news organizations. That is, when they report on the incident, there should be an 8-2 split. 80% on the bright side and 20% on the dark side, at most 20%. And he was already considered very liberal. So it's an 8-2 split. What kind of news reporting is that? Today, you see on the mainland, all the news organizations are either owned by the state or the party. There are no independent news organizations. And just a few days ago, on the 18th of June, the authority in charge of news organizations made an order. They instructed editors to be alert. Without orders from from up above, they mustn't criticize anything about a country. So what sort of country are we talking about? In Hong Kong, we say we want to defend Hong Kong. We want to learn from the lesson of the June 4th, a tripartite separation of powers. But then the government claims it's an executive-led government, and the legislature must support the executive to the extent that we can't even recognize the electoral, so we all know what it's about in our minds. We must not forget the June 4th. Vindicating June 4th, some might say, how can you ask government in power to apologize for having killed people? We don't need them to own up to the history, because history is there. There was the Tiananmen Square, and CNN showed us all these scenes, so there's already a record of history. There's no need to ask them to vindicate it. Now, I teach journalism. 10 out of 10 students from the mainland know about the June 4th. Don't take them lightly as if you think they're ignorant, they don't know what June 4th is. No, it's not the case. But then, at the same time, let's bear in mind this campaign. We want to go home. There are exiled Red Goose who want to go back, and there's also the Tiananmen Mothers movement. And the borderless reporters, they say we must free Liu Xiaobo. Your time is up, Ms. Mao.
Mr. Frederick Fung, we don't want to remember, and yet we can't forget. Time flies things have changed. We have got new generations coming into this world and the older generation passing. We have had a lot of radical changes. Now China has risen to become a great power, but corruption is still in existence. There is very serious inequality of income. Human rights are not being respected. Dissidents are being suppressed. This is still going on. In order to consolidate the regime, the public powers go unrestrained, and the people's and everything has been turned into the political tools. Development overrides everything at the expense of the quality of living. The environment is being damaged. The economic prosperity has resulted in corruption and also inequality of income. The problem is that there is this one-party rule. They haven't got any checks and balances. They don't have any monitoring mechanism. In the past, Premier Wen had shouted grand slogans saying that he would like to have reforms in all sorts of areas, but then it has never been implemented. Can this bring about long-term stability and prosperity? Of course not. The totalitarian rulers may have peace temporarily, but then I don't think they can win the hearts of the people. There won't be any harmony in its true sense. Mr. President, year after year, we are not deterred by the bad weather. We come out to mourn the June 4th victims. We haven't forgotten June 4th. We will never forget it. And this is the 25th anniversary. 180,000 people went to the Victoria Park in tears, and they all held the candlelight. They commemorated the June 4th. The memory is still fresh in our mind. The memory hasn't been erased, and we haven't buckled under the political and economic pressure. This is because we know that June 4th is still the benchmark to measure our conscience, and it tells whether we know the good from the bad. Mr. President, we know that on the eve of June 4th, the CCP rulers would be panicky, and this year is no exception. The CCP tried to house arrest or arrest the dissidents, and then many pro-establishment camps have been trying to show their loyalty. Now, this year, there are the so-called Love Hong Kong campaigners trying to criticize us unreasonably. I think this is very foolish. Mr. President, does it show that does it mean that we can discard the memory just because there has been economic prosperity? I think the rulers try to window dress, and then there are others who try to water down the tragedy. But in fact, in the past, the students moved us, and then there was the crackdown, and it shocked the whole world. Mr. President, we shouldn't forget June 4th. We have to vindicate June 4th. One day it is unaddressed, then we will still be having a bad dream going after the rulers. Violence cannot be used to suppress all the freedom. Now, they think that human rights can be suppressed, trampled upon. They think that freedom and democracy can be sacrificed. Mr. President, I think at this moment we should stand united. We see that the systems and mechanisms in Hong Kong being demolished by the Beijing government. Maybe the government would try to tear off the mask. Last week, the referendum was started, and from the feedback, we can see that we are not going to buckle under fate. The core values of the people of Hong Kong are such that we respect the rule of law, we go after democracy. I don't think we would allow this to be violated. We are passing the spirit of June 4 from one generation to another. I don't know why the government still doesn't understand, so I speak. Mr. Ronnie Tong, Mr. President, 25 years is a long period of time. It is a landmark that we should commemorate. Mr. President, every year we commemorate the June 4th. Every year in the LegCo we hold a debate. And almost every year someone would ask me, what's the meaning of holding a debate on June 4th? Mr. President, 25 years is not a short period of time, and therefore today we should look at the meaning, the significance of June 4th. Mr. President, almost every year I've been asked about the outcome of having a debate, and I was asked whether it has drawn any attention. We haven't got anybody from the pro-establishment camp here. It is not news. Just now I tried to check the press covering on the internet of today's debate. I think the only one was about your ruling Ms. Ho's light out of order. There wasn't any coverage about the content of our debate. Probably tomorrow the only story to be covered is that Sid Ho's light has been stifled. So does it mean that our debate is meaningless? Mr. President, on the eve of June 4th, there was an opinion survey, and it was found that less than half of the people of Hong Kong would observe the June 4th commemoration. And it seems that people have started to forget the June 4th. So I was worried when I was walking to the Victoria Park on June 4th. But then it was 8:45 when I looked at my watch. The vigil was about to end, but there were still lots of people trying to enter the Victoria Park. Countless of them. It shows that we can't stop the movement. Mr. President, as to whether our debate here attracts any attention, and whether an opinion poll shows whether people still remember June 4th, I don't think such things are important at the end of the day. Ms. Ho stood up to speak. She said that she was worried. She thought that history might be changed. Some of the colleagues have also said maybe in a few years' time, June 4th will be forgotten altogether. No, I'm not worried at all. I don't think this is the nature of the Chinese people. Mr. President, from a certain point of view, China is a nation that has suffered many pain and tragedies. For our 5,000-year history, we have many tragedies similar to the June 4th. I think there were even more and worse in the past. I'm sure there have been many emperors who had cracked down on many movements. Probably you know history better than me. I understand that in the 5,000-year history of China, I think there was only one emperor, Han Wudi, who ordered that he himself should be reprimanded for wrongdoing. Other than that, I don't think other emperors had done the same. You would ask me whether it is meaningless to hold a debate on June 4th. In the past, historians would get killed if they didn't write properly and faithfully. Currently, you would be sent to jail. But it doesn't mean that the Chinese people will forget our own history. In the Qin dynasty, many people would like to sing praises for Emperor Qin. 5,000 years later, we still know the truth. That is, Emperor Qin was not a good one. Claudia Mo was right to point out that, of course, we have to insist on the vindication of June 4th. This is because I think it is a responsibility of the Central People's Government. But at the end of the day, whether it is to be vindicated is not that important. Does it mean that they verbally vindicate June 4th and then we can regard it as something that hasn't happened? Or their failure or their refusal to vindicate would render our debate meaningless? I don't think so. As I have said, the history of China is a history of pain, suffering, and disasters. Some people have said that history is the accumulation of failures, but then from our failures, from our sufferings, the people of China will mature, will grow up. Today, we have our pursuit for democracy. We have been persevering. I think somehow we have been motivated by June 4th. We must not forget June 4th. We mustn't forget the importance of democracy and freedom. And therefore, today, I think the significance of June 4th is that this is part of our history of growing up. Thank you.
Mr. Kenneth Lau. President, this is the 25th anniversary of the June 4 massacre. This year, no exception, 180,000 people turned out at Victoria Park asking for vindication of the June 4th massacre. That is not just to do justice to thousands of people who lost their lives in that tragedy. It's also a movement to ask for opening up and reform, and the core values is against corruption. In 1942, in April, in a constitutional speech, Mao Zedong mentioned 2 points. He said that, of course, China lacks a number of things. In the main, China lacks 2 things. First, independence. Second, democracy. If either one is missing, then things won't be good in China. And President allowed me to quote a speech made on the 3rd of July 1945. Xinhua Daily editorial on that day is about true democracy is something for China. One paragraph mentioned that having democracy has everything to do with the people, and we rely on the power of the people, and people must stand up and proactively take part in important issues and fight major obstacles. And then China can really move along the path of democracy. These remarks were made by the Chinese Communist Party before it came into power. However, in a 65 years rule, has CCP ever implemented the values I just mentioned? I want to bring out one point. For the people of a country, the biggest safeguard do not come from words that are pleasing to people's ears. It should not be just verbal undertakings from senior members of government. Rather, there should be checks and balances and also respect for civil rights. Without a safeguard in the Constitution and from democracy, we can see the tortuous road taken by China in the last 65 years, and also the sacrifice of so many people. If there can be a change, then the direction of governance can be changed. And this change in stance will very likely make an impact on Hong Kong as well. Deng Xiaoping, in his third volume of remarks, had an article on preserving stability and prosperity of Hong Kong. He talked about his views on one country, two systems, and I quote, "Today, I'd like to say that our policy is not going to change. Nobody can change it because the people like this policy. With the support of the people, no one should oppose such policy. The joint declaration is not going to change. Well, even in the turbulent years of CCP, we always honor our undertaking internationally. We do honor our undertaking. We stick to our words because we are a big nation. We are graceful." All right, these remarks are still there. However, this undertaking that we won't be changed for 50 years, how much is left? The joint declaration stated clearly that the Hong Kong is out as a part of the central of PRC. And the Hong Kong SLG enjoys a high degree of autonomy. And what about that white paper just published? The content aroused the concern, a high degree of concern among the people of Hong Kong. It said that the Beijing government has a high degree of autonomy of Hong Kong, and we will query whether the central government is using that white paper to distort the spirit of the joint declaration and to distort the basic law and to distort the separation of powers, which we have always respected and hold on to. And we query whether the central government is really determined to implement one country, two systems here. Looking back, the CCP and its leaders, well, how many of them have promised verbally? How many of them have honored their undertakings? The spirit of the June 4th is to persist in democracy and rule of law, to use the law to replace the rule of men, and to provide constitutional checks for those in power. I speak to support Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan's motion. Thank you. Mr. Leung, President, history moves on like a river. 25 years ago, young people in China stood up and speak out on the future of that country. And now, Hong Kong people fight for a true universal democracy. 25 years ago, there was tanks and also bullets. Now we have hackers and also white paper. So things never change. On China, there is no end to suppression and resistance. This year, we had a record turnout rate in Victoria Park because we do feel the feelings of the martyrs of democracy 25 years ago. Zhao Ziyang, who was purged, and Yan Jiaqi, who is now in exile. When he was interviewed, he said that on the eve of the June 4th, there was the twilight of the rule of law. There was a proposal to separate the government and the party, and there should be a proper civil service system set up. That was the proposal. important civil servants should be appointed in accordance with the law, and they could not be removed from the position if they had not made any mistakes. However, with the martial law in force, things have changed. Mr. Zhao Ziyang was purged and removed. There was no rhyme or reason, and the rule of law, the hope that rule of law should prevail in China, vanished into thin air. So what has happened in China now? People's conscience is lost in the greed for money, and they say that development must press ahead. To ensure stability of the power, they will not relent on trampling human rights. Tenement mothers had to overcome so many things to remember their children. Young lives were lost in that massacre that turned into a political turmoil, and people say that it was just a storm in a teacup in the rise of a great nation. But I believe there are values in this world far more important than power and wealth, and it's something everyone should fight for. The Occupy Central campaign is now in the process of a referendum in order to fight for genuine universal suffrage in 2017. Over 700,000 people have voted. This is so encouraging. Since the handover, we gradually see light for democratic movement in Hong Kong. 2017 is a critical moment. What we need is a nominating procedure with no screening at all, so that we can have a sustainable political system in Hong Kong. This would touch a raw nerve on the part of those with vested interest, and the CCP feels that they are being endangered. Our network faced hackers of a national level, and people try to suppress the fight for true universal suffrage. I think the brutal force can be compared with tanks and bullets. However, I saw people, young and old, queuing up outside the voting stations so that they can counter the internet brutality and also attacks, verbal attacks from CCP. This is very similar to the situation when Mr. Wong tried to stop the tanks from pressing ahead many years ago. When I was about to vote, I met a family of 5. They told me that they had voted online, but they wanted to be physically present at the voting station. On the 1st of July rally, they are going to take to the streets so that they can stand up and be counted. They don't want people to distort public opinion, which can't be quantified in this fight for genuine universal suffrage. Plato said that, well, a political reality is if you don't stand up, you would have to put up with a ruler worse than you are. Now, ordinary people may not have heard of Plato, but they see how Sau-lan's government is suppressing our people, and of course they feel disappointed. But democracy is our only way out. I do trust in a democratic system. I'm sure democracy can lead us ahead. The student movement were cracked down with sweat, with blood. They tried to fight for a better future. That was civil disobedience 25 years ago. Now, we will use civil disobedience as a last resort. We have taken over the torch from the Tiananmen students. Let Hong Kong be the model for democracy in China, so that we can bring happiness to our future generations. Someone asked, what is the relationship between vindication of June 4th and democracy in Hong Kong? Well, the basic principles of democracy is to respect individuals. A government that do not respect lives cannot be expected to bring democracy to its people. Every year, we ask for vindication of the June 4th massacre. We would like to awake the conscience of the CCP. This is the bare minimum we can expect of them. Well, we will not forget this dream. We will always remember this dream of the June 4th. We will also always remember this dream for democracy in China. With these remarks, I support Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan's motion.
Ms. Emily Lau. President, I speak in support of Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan's motion. Just now, Mr. Tong said that there are some who ask what is the purpose of a debate. Well, the debate is significant, President. In the whole of the People's Republic of China, which other city, which other council could debate the June 4th incident? That's why many have asked. The sovereign has been transferred for over 17 years now. Yes, the land has been transferred. Even you've said so, President. But, you know, the people haven't felt they've been reunited with their motherland. And many still would not forget the June 4th incident. The the State Council published this white paper on the one country, two systems in Hong Kong. In this whole white paper, there's no mention of the June 4th incident at all. Yesterday, Chi-wai Leung published his second year work report. And that is, he want to work in a pragmatic manner for the people. Again, there's no mention of the June 4th. So it shows that the Beijing and the Chi-wai Leung conglomerate do not know the people of Hong Kong. To many people in Hong Kong, the June 4th incident is ingrained in them, and many would not forgive either. They will not forget and they will not forgive. So why do we want to ask for the vindication of the June 4th incident? Because we want them to conduct an investigation and find out exactly what happened, and then they could pursue responsibility. For people who have suffered, who've been hurt, they should be given compensation. Only then could we heal the wounds, and only then could the country truly move forward. I'm sure this day will come. You can see from the experience in other countries where there's a major wound, there should be a committee to look into it and see what's actually happened. But many are saying that we are moving farther away from this goal. You can see the Xi Jinping ruling team. This team is totalitarian. They've recently published a book. They say they must learn from Mao Zedong, and all mainland schools must study Mao Zedong. The Communist Party, yes, has this quite powerful leader. But I think even Chinese people are become increasingly aware of their rights, and they will fight for their rights. So if for China to have democracy, we have to rely on the people of Hong Kong. But in the Hong Kong SAR, certainly we could play a role. I'm a member of the concerned group about lawyers defending rights on the mainland. I've come across some lawyers. They told us every time it's important that we keep Hong Kong this way. We must preserve Hong Kong because Hong Kong is still the freest city on the mainland in China, and we have rule of law. We're the only place with rule of law. If we could keep Hong Kong this way, we could contribute immensely to the development of China. The Beijing government always criticized the Japanese government for distorting history, but aren't you doing the same? There are young people on the mainland who've never heard of the June 4th incident. So that's why some came to Hong Kong. And they thank the Alliance for working so hard to raise money, and finally they managed to set up this museum. Of course, now the Owners Corporation is trying to suppress us. And of course, we won't be afraid. We're not even afraid of suppression from the state, not to mention from owners' corporations. Anyway, this is the museum on the June 4th. And I believe this museum will help to disseminate a message on June 4th to all corners of the world, including the People's Republic of China, so people on the mainland would know what happened. The communist people tells us that they represent the people, but at the same time they have slaughtered so many people. The hands are full of blood, or the hands are covered in blood. Now maybe in Hong Kong, we're not asked to use our blood to fight them. But people in Hong Kong want us to be rational and peaceful and non-violent in fighting for our cause. Then we see so many people on the mainland are locked up for no reason. They're tortured. Doesn't matter if they're lawyers who defend people's rights, or others who try to defend the rights of others, or just ordinary members of the public. They just try to defend the right, but then they are persecuted. So even for us in Hong Kong, we feel shame. The June 4th is just the once-in-a-year opportunity for us to speak our mind. On the mainland, there are many people who have been subjected to persecution over the years and really angry about it. We hope the people on the mainland would soon stand up and defend their rights and interests. And they will strive for democracy, freedom, and free development. In Hong Kong, in this small place, we will try our best to help them. I hope I'm able to see a free and democratic China. Mr. Raymond Chen. President, there's just one line of the motion today. This Council urges that the 4th of June incident be not forgotten and the 1989 pro-democracy movement be vindicated. But then there are two very controversial words. Incident. The first word is incident. June 4th is a massacre. It's a tragedy. It's a national tragedy. But here in this Council, when we debate this motion, we can only describe it as an incident. This so-called neutral term, without any value judgment, and without any value judgment. Actually, there's a value judgment in itself. We try to shy away from the truth, but we have no choice but to use the term incident, and I find that sad. The other controversial term is vindicated. In recent years in Hong Kong, some are saying that we shouldn't ask for vindication. Mr. Lee said in one of his articles that the June 4th incident is a clear-cut case about right and wrong. People have formed their judgment already. There's no need to vindicate it. We are asking the Chinese ruling party to vindicate the case, but by vindication doesn't mean that we will pursue responsibility. It won't lead to the end of one-party rule. But of course, eventually, if there's change in China, vindication may become reality, but it doesn't mean, though, that we could change the totalitarian rule. So today, I'm not going to debate whether we should use the term vindicated. Of course, today the members have moved any amendments to the motion. Now, vindicated is the most used word, but I hope members won't say that they are not going to support this motion because this word is not aggressive enough. But then it's more than about vindication. It's about the pursuing responsibility of those who have slaughtered people. It's like the word civic nomination on my T-shirt is essential. We cannot leave out any part of it. Now, in 1990, I was a Form 6 student, and there was a banner in school saying that Hong Kong people have no more hope, and we must pay tribute to the June 4th incident. I don't know if any schools or any principals would allow students to put up banners like this to commemorate the June 4th incident and to strive for vindication. I once told you stories about June 4th. There was a student from the mainland who migrated to Hong Kong. He never watched anything about June 4th on the mainland. He knew nothing about June 4th because before the word June comes out, then there's a bleep and there's no signals about June 4th. So he's saying that there's a group of new arrivals in Hong Kong. They long for the freedom in Hong Kong. But I don't know how much longer we'll enjoy freedom and press freedom in Hong Kong. Now, there is the Copyright Amendment Bill 2014. The details are in the devil is in the details. That's about stifling our creation. And then we don't know in future, if we go on the internet, there will be censorship. Maybe the articles about June 4th will not be allowed to be uploaded. And there's another story. That I once hosted a radio program. I was told it was a program jointly hosted between Hong Kong and the mainland, and they asked me not to mention June 4th. But eventually the words were uttered. But there's nothing to do with orders coming from above. Actually, it was the colleague who suggested it because he was worried. Now, there are 740,000 people voting. But Oxfam has said that it's nothing to do with this walk for democracy. And although in Chinese they also call it trail walker, but this is different trail walker. So again, because then again the orders don't come from above. It's just that the lackeys are worried. So lackeys are the ones to be feared. And there's another story still. I talked to director who made a film on June 4th at Weibo, but then it was censored. Now we have to speak the truth. We have to speak from our conscience. In the artists, there are many artists, Wang Yuming and Waiman Wang and so on. They've all appealed to people to vote on this 22nd of June, but then their Weibo accounts were blocked. I told Weibo, you could block the accounts of mainlanders so they can't see messages or comments left by Hong Kong people. Don't block Hong Kong people's account. Now, on the 4th of June, I went to Victoria Park. I was standing by the MTR exit. I told people it's fine if the candlelight went out, but then we mustn't let the light in us go out. We have to strive for democracy. That's the best way to answer to those who were sacrificed on June 4th, in June 4th incident. I hope on the 1st of July march we will see more people. Now, at Home Affairs panel meeting, I asked how come the June 4th candlelight vigil is not included in this intangible heritage. The official said that an incident must last 3 generations before it would be considered an intangible cultural heritage. So I hope after 3 generations this case will be there. That means after 50 years, the June 4th candlelight vigil and the July 1st protest march would be included in the list of intangible cultural heritage. Now, we may still not be here, but I hope our next generation will pursue this. The June 4th candlelight vigil and the July 1st protest marches are unique to Hong Kong, and we must make sure it's passed on from generation to generation.
Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Kin-yuen. Mr. President, June 4th is a memory that we don't want to recall, and yet it is a collective pain that we cannot forget. June 4th is something that the 1.3 billion people on the mainland cannot touch. It is a wound in our history. Time flies, and 25 years have already passed. For 25 years, a quarter of a century, we have been lighting the candles at Victoria Park. It is the light of hope in China. We are the only place where we can mourn the dead in June 4th. The candlelight will converge to become a fire that will light up the truth of history. Participants of the Victoria Park Vigil, and for those who have personal experience of June 4th, we are witnesses to the history. We don't want to recall, but we dare not forget. Every year, we have got hundreds of thousands of candlelights. It saddened our hearts, but it wakes us up. In Hong Kong, this is something quite rare because we're supposed to be an economic city. It is also our pride. If it is to become part of the intangible cultural heritage, I think it is worth the effort to do it. Mr. President, we have to face up to the truth of history. This year, we have many so-called June 4th truths. Say, for example, there was this saying that few people died or no people died on Tiananmen Square. But this sort of sophistry is hateful. How can you make a separation between casualties within the square and outside the square of Tiananmen Square? How come that some people all out of a sudden told us such truth? Now, even for the official media in China, they would not make such statements. And yet, in Hong Kong, some people are trying to confuse the truths. This is shameful. For us to face the truth of history, I think it isn't just we in Hong Kong, but also the mainland government. By facing up to our past mistakes, then we can truly be responsible for our future. The Cultural Revolution went on for 10 years. It took place a long time ago. It ended when the CCP faced up to it. And then there was a resolution at the third plenum of the 11th CCP, so that the suffering was addressed temporarily. But of course, there are still different views concerning the conclusion. But still, at least, they have tried to face history squarely. Of course, we also want the Japanese government to face squarely its previous history of assaulting China, invading China, and then Germany also faces her previous history of aggression. Different nations have done differently. Now, today, when we go to Japan, when we go to Germany, we get a very different view. Now, if the Chinese government can face the history of June 4th squarely, properly, then I'm sure we have different possibilities in terms of our development. Therefore, we have to face history properly. In addition, for June 4th, I think it should be vindicated. Vindicating June 4th means that the government and the community will come to a consensus. It means that it isn't an unrest, it isn't a riot. Rather, it was a positive action on the part of the people, but then it was suppressed by the government, and it was a grave mistake. Vindicating June 4th means that we can allow people on the mainland to lead a normal life. Now, June 4th has become a very sensitive phrase. It is a taboo. you can talk about anything, but whenever you talk about June 4th, you are worried as to whether somebody is watching over your shoulder, and you have to do it in fear. And it has become a wound that shouldn't be touched. But again, it means that it is a wound that has not been treated. It has not recovered. And it means that it will give rise to many problems. The Chinese rulers have to find ways to hide this part of our history. And therefore, the Chinese government cannot deal with the aspirations of her people with common sense. In other words, June 4th has become a barrier that the government must overcome. I think by resolving this problem, it means that China's development will go on a road which is much wider than today's path. We must move forward. We have to overcome this barrier, and then we widen the freedoms to be enjoyed by the people of Hong Kong, of China. The Chinese people should be allowed freedom of movement so that they can go freely to any city to buy things that they like and do other things that they freely choose to do. So we hope that one day on the mainland there can be the official and open mourning of the victims of June 4th, so I speak. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan, you may now reply. You have 1 minute 18 seconds. Thank you, Mr. President. Most of the time, we didn't see the pro-establishment camp. I just want to say that history will remember you. Mr. Yuk-man made one point. I have to clarify this point. He said that the gathering in Tsim Sha Tsui was a gathering for the people of Hong Kong. But what about the vigil at Victoria Park? Don't try to be divisive. I think we should be united. We should face the regime in a united way. For the alliance, well, you may say that this is not a movement which has its roots locally. Well, in fact, this is wrong. We embrace our core values, and that's why we have been putting up a fight. Since 1989, we have been putting up a fight, and we've fought against Article 23 legislation. Today, we're still doing this, and it is entirely rooted in the local core values. I would like to urge the citizens that it is time for you to come out. You have to join the July 1st march. We are at a time of crisis. We have to face the regime, and our values are being eroded. So please join the July 1st march. I now put a question to you. That is the motion moved by Honorable Lee Cheuk-yan be passed. With those in favor, please raise their hands. Mr. Yip Kok Him claims a division. The bell will be rung for 5 minutes.
開始表決。
Voting begins. Please check your vote. If there are no questions, voting is ended. The results are to be displayed. The result is members returned by FCs 25 present, 9 for, 7 against, 9 abstentions. Members returned by GCs by direct elections 23 members present, 14 for, 8 against, no abstention. The question hasn't been agreed by majority of each of the two groups of members who are present. I declare the motion negatived. It is now 7 minutes to 10 p.m. I don't think we can finish our business before 12 midnight. So I adjourn the meeting and will resume at 9 a.m. tomorrow.